Y'all just want to start?
Yes, sir, we can go and start.
All right. Do we need to call, I guess we need to call an order, don't we? Yes, it's a workshop, so. Okay. I guess I can say.
Morning,
Hey, good morning, guys. How's it going?
I understand Williams will be out sick, he's not gonna be able to attend.
I saw that email. Good deal. That's I guess this will be a little shorter with just my updates.
Yeah, so the judge, you know, he joined us in a little bit, he had a hearing, whenever he wraps up the next step in. But for now,
Okay.
we're ready to go, got any questions, anything I want? All yours, I guess.
All right. Well, to start off, I'm gonna kind of give an update on the project. I'm gonna start with the P25 radio portion of the project and not the what's going on at dispatch with the ETCOG grant. We'll get to that at the end here. That's probably majority of exactly what's going on right now. But to start with the radio system, we're trying to work with nailing down all the tower sites that are going to be part of the project. We've had a few things kind of move around a little bit, starting with Grand Saline. Originally, we thought we were going to use that 9-acre site with Fruitvale Water Department. And apparently they've shown or they've responded that they are not interested in that. So we are going to move that site to the Precinct 1 barn. It's located really close to town. It should give really great coverage there. Same height tower and everything, just different location, little different location. With regards to the sheriff's office, with regards to the property that's located, hopefully I get the orientation right, the northwest side of the building. There's just not enough land over there, as we kind of talked about, to build the tower. So the height tower that's needed, 250. So going to look at moving this to the back of the property, and kind of moving it away from the actual building and towards the back. And so if any time in the future you guys decide to build a new jail, sheriff's office and all, and y'all go to another piece of property, and I'm talking years and years, but that tower piece of property could be sectioned off and still kept, and it wouldn't be sitting right next to the existing building. So that might actually work out better. But that slight move is going to occur. And then with regards to the Wills Point area, there were always a couple of sites over there that were going to be considered. There's the new fire department property that's right in the downtown area. And then there's also a spot out at the business park there in Wills Point that's located about 2.5 miles to the east of the fire department. And that actually provides probably a lot better coverage to the Edgewood area. And with everything happening in Hunt County has signed a contract with Harris to put in a new P25 system there as well. And Trot is actually, and myself actually, are helping Hunt County, very similar like we're helping you guys here in Van Zandt County with their project. And there's a tower site, or one of the sites, it's a water tank actually, it's located in Quinlan. And that's going to be used to provide coverage down in that lower portion of Hunt County. And that'll also feed into y'all's county and allow roaming onto that site and really help, coverage up there in that very far northwestern area where Rolling Oaks and kind of the Lake Tawakona area meets up with Van Zandt County or that portion of Van Zandt County. So we're really wanting to get L3 Harris, as we nail down these sites, to look at that Wills Point site and how it works with the Hunt County site and come up with what's the most feasible solution there. So we're working on that one as well. And Ben Wheeler is tied down. That's always been the county barn over there. That's still that same site. That leaves the last site in the county, which is down in the southwest area, the Precinct 2 area. We've spent a lot of time and effort here, probably since we spoke last, I would say over the last three weeks or so, 4 weeks maybe, to survey the DPS tower that's an existing tower down in that area, researching that tower, having discussions with DPS personnel to come up with a conclusion on its feasibility for the system. And so I'm going to present some information about that tower site, and but it's our conclusion that the feasibility of that site, it's not as a feasible solution for the county for the P25 system for these following reasons. The P25 coverage from the DPS tower site falls short of providing the typical public safety level of coverage. That's probably number one. And that's really because the tower isn't on as high a ground elevation, and the tower isn't as tall as was proposed over at the South Van Zandt Fire Department. When you look at the available height on the DPS tower, the ground elevation and the tower height over at South Van Zandt Fire Department that's proposed, the antennas for the county would be almost 100 feet lower. And so when you kind of look at the 100 feet, if you're looking at a 300-foot tower, that's about a third of the height going away. Geographically, I think the tower is probably in a good spot, but it's just the lower height available and the ground elevation difference that make that coverage not as optimum for sure. The added height of having the taller tower over at, or the higher antenna height, will really help down in that southwest portion of the county, where joint responses and interoperability could occur with your neighboring agencies due to the cities of Maybank and Gun Barrel City that are just on the other side of your county boundary there. Another big reason why we feel this isn't feasible, the tower isn't viable and feasible, is the tower was built in 1970. It's 52 years old, and the actual condition of the tower, the DPS has not done a structural analysis or any sort of condition assessment on the tower that they can even provide. And so without getting a structural engineering expert's assessment, we don't know further whether or not the tower would even support your equipment. That cost to do a structural analysis and to map the tower and to look at all the structural aspects of the tower above ground level. I was able to talk to an engineering firm here, and that's about a $10,000 study to look at that. You guys are proposing to install 2 large Omni antennas that are about 15 feet long, and the biggest loading are these 2 big microwave dishes. One would shoot over to Ben Wheeler, and the other one would shoot from the tower down in that portion of the county up to the sheriff's office. So that's another issue. If depending on the structural analysis on the vertical part of the tower, if that came back with questions, then the next phase of an analysis would be to look at the foundation of the tower. And that's about a $12,000 study where they actually use radar to look underground at the foundation, and to also do some excavation around parts of the tower to look at that. So typically towers of this age, newer towers, newer towers typically have really good documentation, and they may even have a design that was used for the foundation. And this type of study wouldn't be required because the engineering firm could look at that information and tell whether or not the tower could support the load. But due to the age, that documentation doesn't exist. So with the DPS tower, there would be a lot of upfront assessment costs and possible delays and associated risks to determine whether or not, the tower could even support your equipment. The In addition, what we found out is that the tower compound, and I'm talking about the fenced area that the DPS actually has owns the land for. It's only 30 foot by 30 foot. It's really small. And so there's really not space for the county to put a new radio shelter there, their own radio shelter there. So really the options would be that they would have to, the county, Van Zandt would have to come in and replace the DPS tower and put in a shelter that would be something that DPS would have to move into as well. And y'all would have to kind of share that space because there's not room for a second shelter there. There is one option to put in an outdoor cabinet. And an outdoor cabinet is kind of exactly what that seems. It's just on a slab foundation. It's an outdoor cabinet that would house all the radio equipment. But that's less feasible or optimum, mainly because of when you need to work on that equipment, you open the cabinet and it's exposed to rain and cold and dust conditions that could harm the equipment. So it's always best to have it in a shelter if you can. The tower site there would definitely take a new generator, a new equipment shelter, new grounding, new AC power and submeter. And more than likely or possibly enhancements to the tower, again, just to support the equipment that you guys would want to add there, not taking into consideration that the site doesn't cover as well, near as well. During my survey of the site, the technician that I met at the site actually mentioned that the site has some issues with grounding and that needs to be upgraded at the site as well. One question that came up, one of my questions was, DPS doesn't have a lot of equipment on the tower. They have 3 antennas up at the very top. And this tower was built, like I said, many years ago when the structural requirements for the tower, for towers were very different. They've changed over the years and all. So my question might be, what is the long-term requirement of DPS for this tower site? Might they in 10 years say, we don't need it anymore? So I think the big thing here is, Van Zandt County needs to be looking at a tower site that's going to give them 20 or 25 years of use. The radio system has got that life in it. And, not knowing what might happen down the road is, again, another reason for my conclusions here. A couple other things, going with the DPS tower does not give an option to enhance broadband through the COG to this portion of the county. No fiber would be run by the COG over to the DPS tower like it would be to the brand new tower that's built at the South Van Zandt Fire Department. That fiber would provide additional redundancy and backup to the public safety radio system, the new P25 system. So that's something that wouldn't exist at DPS. And also the DPS tower doesn't give the option to add potentially a cellular carrier to the tower, which might definitely help with the coverage down in that portion of the county. During my survey at the DPS tower, I was leaving the site and calling one of my coworkers to kind of give them an update on what I saw, and it was pretty much, at least for me on Verizon, it was almost getting back to the edge of Canton before I could actually get any cell coverage down in there. So this is not necessarily, adding a cell carrier to the towers, any of the towers in the county is something we're going to look at as an option to potentially provide some additional revenue to the county to offset some costs. And those are things that we'll ask in the RFP for the towers is what's the additional cost to build this tower a little stronger to support that equipment. So those are things we're going to absolutely look at. The monthly rent for a cellular carrier is in kind of that part of the Texas would probably be somewhere around the $1,500 a month range. You see them range anywhere from about $1,250 to sometimes $3,500, but that really depends on if you're in a metropolitan area, or if it's the only tower that's an option or things like that. But kind of the average, you see about 1,900 in metropolitan areas. So I would think 1,500 is a pretty good budgetary number here for planning purposes. So that's kind of my feedback there on the DPS tower. Like I said, my conclusion is that the feasibility of using that tower is just not feasible in this case. The proposed tower at the Van Zandt Fire Department will provide better coverage, will provide the opportunity to bring in the fiber, will provide the opportunity for the broadband, and all the enhancements that you're having to make at the DPS tower, of course, will have to be made at the South Van Zandt Fire Department. But I think it'll be a better use of the county's money long term, and provide you guys a great site for 20 to 30 years for that radio system. Actually longer, the tower structure and all. So those are my conclusions on the DPS tower. Do you guys have any questions about that? I know it was quite a bit of information.
What's the possibility of using some of the existing telephone towers for?
That is that's a good question, and that is always something that is considered. With those type of structures, typically they don't build them quite as tall, so they're probably about the same height as the DPS tower, which is about 250 feet. And DPS, just I might not have hit on this, but the DPS tower, because of the existing antennas, the county's antennas would have to start about 220 feet on the tower. And that's where that 100-foot difference comes into play, that height plus the difference in the ground elevation. But using an existing cellular company's tower, which most of those these days are owned by some of the big tower companies like Crown Castle or SBA or American Tower. The cellular companies a lot of times will build the tower, and then they'll sell the tower to these tower companies that rent out space on them. And so there is a possibility of doing that. But what comes with that is a monthly rent that could be, it's a reoccurring cost for sure. So as we look down in that portion of the county on how, the sites kind of work together, the spacing is kind of important. You don't want to have sites too close, and now you have a lot of let's call it overlapping coverage. It's kind of some overlapping is good, but too much overlapping is kind of like you're spending a lot of money twice, let's say. So the placement of these sites is really good. And when we really looked at it and spent time driving that area, this is way earlier this year and all, really the two best options geographically were building something at the South Van Zandt Fire Department or that DPS tower. Those are both on the kind of the opposite sides of, is that Highway 19? Is that right? What is it, Chad?
198.
Yes. Okay, yes, I had that wrong. So those were by far the two best, and how those sites work with the site at the sheriff's office, and how they work with the site over in Ben Wheeler. And as you go north in the county, and you get into those more commercially developed areas like Wills Point and Edgewood and Grand Saline and Van and Canton, let's say, it's really important to have those sites pretty close to those cities so that you can make sure that those the signals are strong enough to get into those buildings that exist there. And the big dense buildings down in what I'm going to call the southern part of the county, definitely aren't what they are on the northern part of the county. If you kind of draw a line and flip it, you know. So I think the biggest structure of buildings kind of down in that area that's, you know, coverage is strong coverage to get into those buildings is the Morgan Mills School buildings that are down there, kind of between the area we're talking about in the southwest area and the Ben Wheeler site. So the cell towers are potentially an option, but I guess we're going to close with that is that there didn't seem to be any that were located kind of right in that general area between DPS and the South Van Zandt Fire Department. So it would be moving a site quite a bit to get there and reoccurring monthly rent, of course. Still would probably need to build a shelter there, bring in a generator. Typically, those cellular companies don't provide that kind of facility. You've got to develop it for your use. And really, you would just have the ability to hang your antennas on the tower if it would support it and have enough height.
So let me ask you a question. Just would have you and Chad, have y'all explored the Ranch Academy on Highway 19? It's the tallest hill in Van Zandt County. You know anything about that?
So we are actually, let me write this down. It's called the Ranch
Academy.
Let's see here. It's on Highway 19.
Yes.
Okay. Give me just a second. I know that y'all won't be able to see this, but I'm going to pull up on my Google Maps here to take a look at that. I should be able to pull that up. Ranch Academy. Oh yes, it's there's a Grace Family Church across the street or right there.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Let me kind of zoom out here. Okay. Yeah, so that site is going to be a lot of redundant coverage from the sheriff's office. That site would be too far by a good bit, too far to the northeast of kind of where we really need the tower site to really adequately serve you back down into the southwestern quadrant of the county. That site for sure would open up some holes. Here, I'm zooming out here just a little bit. Yeah, unfortunately, that is, if I'm looking at that correctly, that's kind of right between Highway 19 and 198. Is that correct?
Well, yes, it's more, isn't it, off of County Road 2318?
Let me see here. I've got you know what? I'm wondering if I'm looking at the wrong Ranch Academy. It says Ranch Academy. It says it's on County Road 2201.
No, that can't be it.
That's not it? Okay. Let's see here. Let me see if there's another Ranch Academy that's popping up here.
Down on that. Rocky Ridge Drive. Coming farther than that.
There's another one.
I'm looking it up too.
Okay. Yeah, see if you can find it. I'm looking on Highway 9.
Coming up with,
I'm not gonna get myself.
you said 2201?
Shouldn't be 2201. It should be right off of 119, probably a fourth of a mile.
Did you
Fourth
Did
of
you
a
say it?
mile west of
And what's the side street? 2319?
2318 or 2319.
Okay. Let me see. I should be able to find that.
You got the address, Susan?
There's 2305. 2219 I see here.
Okay, no, 22, no, it's still in the 20, still not far enough.
Let's see here. Well, we can, so really the process we're working through right now,
There it is. That's it right there, 2318.
Yeah, 2318.
23.
What's the address on that? That's it.
What did you say? Well, Scott, do you have it up on the screen?
I think that's it.
Let's see here.
What's the address, Susan?
Let's see here. County Road. Okay, I see County Road. Oh, Ranch Academy. Now I see it. Now I see it. Is that, you know what? I wonder if,
Be on the back side.
is that, I might have called that the wrong name earlier. I meant to say that is, hold on a second. Let me zoom
What
out.
other landmarks there, Bert?
Is that the same one as the treatment center too? Yeah,
Oh, that's,
you know what I'm talking about.
yeah, well, that,
It
it
has
used
a,
to be
it has a private road.
Sundown or
Sundown, used to be
used to
Sundown,
be Sundown.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right across from Alligator
Yep,
Grill, old
That's
Alligator
it.
Grill.
yes, I see that. That, you know what? I was thinking that was the Martin. I think I called that the wrong name, but that's the facility right there. That's
Sundown
the
Ranch.
school.
Is it Sundown Ranch?
Yeah, it used to be Sundown Ranch.
Well,
So,
then
oh, now I see Martin Mills High School over there. Okay, so Ranch Academy. Yes, I see it. So Ranch Academy would probably be, it's kind of located between where we're looking,
Yeah.
over there and the Ben Wheeler site. So it would, it's something we can maybe get Harris a coordinate for, but I think it's definitely going to be probably just looking at that layout. If you were to take the county and kind of draw it into 4 quadrants, the 4 precincts, it's almost like you almost need a site kind of in the center of each one of those. If you go move, and what really makes that needed is because for sure, Wills Point and Grand Saline, you got to have sites there. You just got way too many buildings. And if you shift the sites around and try to put something kind of, let's say, between Edgewood and Fruitvale, and then you put a site in Van, and then you bring it around and put it at this Ranch Academy, then you'd be looking at needing a site somewhere off of, say, 243 coming out of Canton, and just to make the spacing right. But then you've moved your sites away and shifted them 90 degrees from your two of your largest metropolitan areas, Wills Point and Grand Saline. And that would probably cause some building problems there if we did a shift like that. Of course, it would be, then we'd be coming off of Ben Wheeler, and we'd have to find a site in Van. But I think we can look at this a little bit closer. We have not looked at that site just because it kind of fell outside of what I would consider the so-called search ring for that quadrant of the county, knowing what the other 4 sites in the county are.
So is it too far south?
Too far, kind of too far to the east to fill that southwest
We're trying to
quadrant.
get over into the west part, like Whitney.
Yeah, it definitely needs to be somewhere between this academy and where Witten is showing on the map, and somewhere back right around 198, and that's kind of, That's kind of why the DPS tower and the fire station there at South Van Zandt really were kind of like the optimum locations. And in our investigation, what we found at the DPS tower. One thing I didn't bring up about the DPS tower, and it's
That's that one. I shared my screen with there.
oh, you did? Okay, okay, yep. Mm-hmm.
That's the one we're talking about.
Yes.
I thought we were trying to fill in like over here, but we're trying to fill in over here.
Yes. No, where you just said, so there's a site in Ben Wheeler, Scott, and then where you were just showing around on your map where you thought we were trying to fill in, that's exactly. Yes.
The old definition about that area.
Yes.
Maybe a little bit more north of that, maybe at around Tundra.
Yeah, you're kind of down in the see where it kind of says Plum Lake Cabin Rentals.
Right.
That's kind of like the optimum center, somewhere right in that area. And as we started looking for facilities that didn't require you guys to buy a piece of land, there's a lot of land, right? But to go buy something that you had access to use, that's where that fire department really shined, and
Whitman's fire department.
We were talking South and Zandt and the old Bethel station. They kind of fell right out of the play.
Oh,
yeah. So yeah, that's kind of yeah, it's kind of like, you have all these other sites set and then you're trying to shoehorn in that last site. And so the ability to move it around a lot, it kind of starts getting a little, the area you're looking at gets smaller and smaller.
how far down is South Van Zandt? How far down is South Van Zandt?
2301 in the Old Bethel community.
2303. So
It's almost by this in Missionary, I think. See that fire station 3? That's it.
That's it right there. Fire station.
That's it. Yep.
It's to the left of that building there in the back corner of the room for the tower side.
Yeah.
That's central.
Yeah, it's very central to that quadrant of the county and how the other sites are kind of, how they provide coverage, and it just works really nicely from an RF coverage standpoint. And hopefully, there's possibly some cell carriers that could look at installing there, and you guys could make some money that would offset some cost of maybe maintenance on the system or some other costs. But it's definitely in an area that I think is underserved from cellular coverage, at least my experience with Verizon down there. I'm not sure about AT&T or others, but
They have a new tower.
it's
I
down.
don't remember. Where is that? It's close to Eustis, isn't it?
The new AT&T
The new
tower,
AT&T tower?
it's coming in off of 2524, about 3 miles outside of Canton on 198.
Oh, wait. Okay.
25
25, it's up here.
up in that area. Yeah.
Yeah. There's 2503. So it's gonna be
Yeah.
somewhere in
To
here.
find 2511, it's offshoots from 2511.
There it is right there.
2511.
Yeah,
So it's right in that area.
yep.
Yeah. Which, with the cellular carriers, they definitely, they're typically looking at building those 190-foot towers, because it's just a good price point, and it's, they sometimes can get away with not having FAA and FCC, registration issues. One thing I failed to say about the DPS tower is that the coordinates for the DPS tower, even though it's been there for 52 years, the coordinates are actually wrong. It shows the tower is located across the road there from where it really is located. I've seen that a lot over the years, especially.
The earth shifts over time.
There you go. Exactly. It just moved it. So it's something that would probably require some, fixing, let's say. And that really lies with the tower owner. But like I said, for all these reasons, unfortunately, it just doesn't seem like a feasible solution and for sure a long-term solution and the best coverage solution for that area of the county. So our next step is to get to Harris kind of some updated sites so that they can go back and rerun the coverage. So, you know, the information on the Grand Saline barn, the coordinates for the back of the sheriff's office property, that adjusted tower height there at the sheriff's office. And then of course, those two options there in Wills Point, they've looked at the fire department. We want them to look at the business park as well before nailing these down. And then, you know, we thought they have looked at the DPS tower, and that's why the feedback that they gave us was that it doesn't provide the level of public safety coverage that's typically required, which is 95% portable outdoor countywide. That's the critical number there. So I think the next step is, you know, like I said, to get Harris that information so they can run those sites and we can get these sites really nailed down, because until those sites are nailed down, and I know Chad needs to get some information to the COG on those sites as well for the fiber project and all, and the broadband project, but we can't get that next RFP out on the street for bids until we get the details on all those sites and get those really squared away. So that's something that we're continuing to work on. And Harris will finalize all the necessary requirements for the tower locations, the heights of the antennas, the loading information for the structural analysis, the radio equipment shelter size and shelter requirements, and the generator size, and all those details that have to go into that next RFP. And I guess the very kind of next thing on the horizon for the radio project would be the so-called detailed design review for the P25 system. And that would be coming after the sites are nailed down. I would say probably 40 to 60 days after those sites are nailed down. And so we want to get Harris nailing, you know, providing those coverage plots and recommending the sites that they think, you know, provides the best coverage here over the next, hopefully over the next week or so. So then the kind of the end of this is an update on we're calling it the Expedited Dispatch Console project. This is all the equipment that's being provided at the console equipment that's being providing at the new dispatch center that's being funded by the ECOG SERI grant. And so the county and Trot and L3 Harris have been having weekly project calls about this on Thursdays at 10 a.m. The ECOG grant was for the $518,071.66. To date, approximately 43,000 of invoices have been paid for rendered and services and received goods. Next week, we are going to audit a bunch of equipment from L3 Harris that is sitting in the Sally port at the sheriff's office. And we're also going to perform a test on the UPS. And after that, Harris and Gold Star, which did the UPS installation, that is, will have invoices totaling approximately $305,000 that could be paid. So that would get us up to $353,000 approximately of the $518,000 that needs to be spent by the end of November 28th, the end of November. The additional cable trays and overhead circuits for the radio room there have been finished. So Harris is supposed to start installing equipment there next week and the following week. So you're gonna see a lot of things, a lot of boxes getting unpacked and things getting racked and installed over there. Let's see here. We have received the power consumption specifications for all the L3 Harris equipment, and I did some calculations, and we're going to need to secure some additional batteries for the UPS that's in dispatch to provide enough capacity to cover all of that equipment. And so that'll be something that needs to be addressed before cutover occurs at dispatch sometime later this year. And we are working on trying to put together an a request for quotes for HVAC equipment to provide better cooling there at the dispatch center for the 3 rooms, the main dispatch room, the radio equipment room, and the supervisor's office. And so I'm working with Chad on that. That's kind of the update. I know a majority of the talk was about the DPS tower, but we definitely wanted to provide all the details there that we found, present that information. Any questions about any of these updates or
I've got one, Barry, just as soon as Harris, if they say that location just east of Wills Point there in the business park.
Yes, sir.
I say that will still give their coverage, their guaranteed coverage. I need to know as soon as possible so we can get on the Wills Point economic development agenda to see if they'll give us that land. They've given us some good reasoning that they would donate us that land.
Right.
And then the second of all, the reason I would rather be out there, I'm very nervous about putting these tires on somebody else's land. Even a long-term lease. I don't want to have a $300,000 or $500,000 tire sitting on somebody else's land, and then they come up in 10 years and say, we're going to sell this, or we're going to add on to our building and get your tire off of our property.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to move one of those. Yeah, and I think that's why having them at your county barns, especially in Grand Saline and Ben Wheeler, are huge. The county barn, we did look at the county barn down in Precinct 2. Unfortunately, it's further down and it's in a hole. The ground elevation is it's low there, and it just unfortunately wasn't kind of in the right spot to work with the other sites. And also I understand the Wills Point scenarios, and yes, as soon as Harris comes back with that, we will know if they prefer that fire department or if they prefer the business park. And there's all these towers are going to require FAA studies to make sure that there's no issues. And I know there is the airport up there, and the edge of Wills Point Regional Airport, or I guess it's Van Zandt County Regional Airport, right? So there's still some things that you have to get by on the FAA part of it, but you really can't run those studies until you really say, hey, these are the sites that Harris really wants. They provide the coverage. They continue to have the guaranteed coverage that the county wants, and it meets all the requirements of the RFP, which is providing those very specific levels of public safety radio coverage requirements. And that's what we saw with the DPS tower, is using that tower brought those levels down below those public safety standards. That was kind of that first point that I kicked off with, because that's probably one of the most important, is the coverage just wasn't public safety level.
We've just got to have ironclad leases if we put it on somebody else's property.
Sure. No, definitely understand. I mean, so I think we should have some feedback from Harris. I think we should probably push them to really get this back to us, hopefully in a week. I think we got to give them some reasonable amount of time to work on this. But as soon as we get them this list and say this is the direction, the DPS tower doesn't seem feasible, because of all these different scenarios that we found, then here's the sites, Harris, get to work on it and come back and give us the results.
I'm afraid somebody will do what, Fruitvale Water did, at least they did it before we built it.
Yes, exactly. The Fruitvale thing, yes, you guys, if there's any, I guess with the South Van Sant Fire Department, there'll have to be some sort of interlocal agreement with some sort of contract for use. But yes, there needs to be something in writing that's very good, that's, gives you guys use of that property for, I would say 50 years.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd say 50 years. You can go higher if you want, but I would say at a minimum, I would say 50 years is and all. And that was one of the questions on the DPS tower is, apparently DPS does own it, but they only own that little small piece of compound that's 30 by 30, and the guy wires from that tower go out into the field. And apparently they're having to work currently with the landowner because he wants to put some horses out there, and he's afraid that those horses are going to run and get clotheslined, if you will, by those guy wires that come down from the tower. So DPS is probably going to have to spend some money to fence off those areas to keep the horses away from where those guy wires come down and get close to ground where they were running underneath them. They might, hurt themselves. So that's something they're dealing with out there right now on that. But for a guy tower, it's very important on those guy wires, right? That tower doesn't exist without those. So, any other questions?
Y'all work with power leasing, like you said before, with all companies and stuff. So that at least we'll be able to get together and get an ironclad lease contract work that. That won't be a problem.
Yes. Yes,
And then local agreement that locks it in, we're guaranteed to do that.
and Chad, we may have, I don't know if you guys have, does Danita have some sort of, I'm sorry, Danita, I've forgotten her name, the county district attorney. Does she have any documents, legal documents to use for something like this?
I have that one that usually we get the documents in there for review.
Gotcha.
There's probably.
Understand. Yes, that definitely the whole underlying use agreement, let's say, if it can be 50 years, that's probably optimal. And Chad will probably want to address there in those that it also gives, the ability for you guys to lease space on the tower to a cellular company that might give you guys the opportunity to make some additional revenue off these sites. And I kind of believe that I can do some investigating with, the big players are AT&T FirstNet, and Chad's got a contact you guys recently made for AT&T FirstNet. You've got Verizon, you've got T-Mobile, and then the new player to the field is Dish Network. I don't know if you guys have heard of Dish Network. They typically were in the or Dish Wireless. They were typically in the TV business, satellite TV business, but they do have some FCC licenses now, and they're building out their network. And I guarantee you they don't have any coverage in Van Zandt County right now, unless they're on one single site in Canton or something. So that's there's really 4 opportunities there to possibly make some revenue there. And also we can kind of start, inquiring about that once these sites are locked down and we know that's moving forward. We can try to talk to those companies and see if this might be something that they were interested in. I think, Chad, you said AT&T FirstNet actually showed some interest already.
I talked to them at the conference with manager, and it was very interesting. So,
Yes. Who does the sheriff's office or the county right now have their cellular coverage through? Is that AT&T?
First,
It is first. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Well, that might be kind of a win-win if you get better coverage and they pay you to be there. That might be nice. All right. That's all I have for today.
Thank you, Mayor.
Hey, thank you. You guys have a good day. And Chad, I'll probably be talking to you this afternoon. But I'll get this list of sites kind of squared away and getting over to Harris.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good day. Scott, thanks for your help.
You're welcome.